Nobody's wearing a suit, huh?
If I could call the meeting to order, we're 4 minutes after 7, so that's appropriately on time, I think. We appreciate everyone being here, especially on this hot, humid evening. Jean just told me that she specifically turned off the air conditioning to keep this meeting short. So, Mr. Secretary, would you read the roll, please?
Sure. Robert King. Here. I'm here. Mary Cronin.
Here.
Diane Cervello.
Here.
Carlo Morano.
Here.
Mary Comstock.
Here.
Ed Torian.
Here.
Paul Swenson. Here. Joan Mead.
Here.
Okay. And would you please read the minutes?
Okay. The minutes. These are the minutes from the meeting on Monday, June the 9th. At that meeting, we accepted the minutes from May 14th. The commission members present were King, Bizade, Morano, Mead, Comstock, and Swenson. Not present, Cronin, Cervello, and Turian. We took input from the public. Herb Heinlein spoke about the need to add a section of the charter regarding cost reduction as a public meeting, and he suggested that it would be conducted 3 months after the adoption of the annual budget. He was also in favor of a cap on bonding. Al Mead spoke about the limits to bonding as a percentage of the grand list. Councilman Paul Rotella spoke at length about the need for an annual cap on non-referendum bonding. He also spoke on the need for greater precision in the charter as to what happens when an ordinance is passed but not certified and not signed by the mayor. He also opposed combining the planning and zoning commissions. Linda Galloway spoke in favor of an annual cap on non-referendum bonding and on the need for public hearing on proposed bonding with greater detail on the proposal. Fred Visconti spoke in favor of an annual cap on non-referendum bonding. Frank Anders spoke in favor of an annual cap on non-referendum bonding, the need for an escalator clause, a lower annual amount for non-referendum bonding, and in support of Thomas Sadi's letter to the Commission. Lynn Tabersack spoke about the need for an annual cap on non-referendum bonding, the inadequacy of the budget process as to the limit on addressing the council as to the capital budget, the lack of proper debate, and the apparent violation of charter requirements this particular year. And that she also suggested that charter should not allow wiggle room and must be a clearer rule book. Warren Levy spoke about the inadequacy of the capital budgeting process and how in 2008 the capital budget was not, in his opinion, properly dealt with. He spoke in favor of an annual cap on non-referendum bonding, spoke in support of strengthening the council as a separate legislative branch of the city government, in part by requiring the council have support staff and independent legal advice under the auspices of the council president. Joel Uri spoke about the importance of an annual limit on non-referendum bonding and urged the commission to revisit this issue. Lynn Waller spoke about the need to cap non-referendum bonding and was upset the commission was not listening to the public. She said that the charter was a rule book that the public can go to and should be clear enough so that lawyers aren't needed to interpret it. Margaret Mitchell spoke about the capital budget process as being in need of mending. At that meeting, in addition to public speaking, there was a lengthy discussion with attorney Paul Jaber, who's a local land use attorney, Al Mead, who served as a member of both the planning commissions and the zoning commissions. And in that discussion, attorney Jaber provided us with an explanation of how the various land use commissions work in the city of Danbury, how they work in neighboring communities. He gave us some history as to Danbury's land use regulation. He discussed the differences between the Planning Commission and the Zoning Commission, and he gave us some advantages of combining the Planning and Zoning Commission together, and also gave us some disadvantages of combining the two commissions. Al Mead related his experience on serving on both commissions and shared his views on how effective the commissions were during his term. Attorney Jaber supports leaving the Zoning and Planning Commission separate. He also pointed out that neighboring towns, on occasion, have long-serving individual planning and zoning commissioners who tend to have a lot of power. He noticed that in his experience, his lengthy experience, Danbury never seemed to have such a person who dominated land use agendas, and he thought that that was a good thing, that power wasn't just focused on one particular commissioner. The commission also had a discussion with Lori Kabak, the town clerk, She discussed her position in city government and stated her preference for a 4-year term for her particular office and explained why. She had completed a course. The length of the course to be a town clerk is 2.5 years. Obviously, that's longer than the term of office, which is 2 years. The commission had further discussion with Paul Rotello and Dwayne Perkins, who are council members. They spoke in favor of keeping 2-year terms, at least as to their particular office in the council. They were against limits on terms. And Councilman Rotello spoke in favor of the council getting its own independent legal advice and staff. Councilman Perkins spoke of the need for the council to have its own dedicated staff person. Finally, the commission discussed with its counsel, Eric Gottschalk, whether the charter could include a recall provision. He advised that a special act of the legislature would be required. There was further discussion whether or not a special act could be obtained from the legislature, and he was going to research that and get back to us. The commission then had a small discussion regarding inviting current elected officials to come and address us, as well as former mayors. And we agreed to hear from the city clerk and treasurer at this meeting. That's it.
Very nicely done, because that was a long, involved meeting. Any corrections or additions to the minutes?
Just a comment. I would like to compliment the secretary on an excellent job. It's a lot of work here, and we appreciate it.
Okay, seeing no hands for corrections or additions, the minutes are approved as read. Now we would like to hear from members of the public that would like to address us. Just before you do, as we're getting a little larger crowd here, and we've been very, very informal here, please make sure you hit all your points, because I would like not to have you speak twice or 3 times, as happened in the past. So again, anyone that would like to speak, we'd ask that you be recognized, come forward, tell us your name and where you live, and then let us know what's on your mind. Yes.
My name is Joel Brook, Cannondale Drive, Danbury. Some of the points that were mentioned by the secretary, I just would like to reinforce so you know that there are even more members of the public who have a similar opinion. The separation of planning and zoning, I agree, and some other people who've had dealings with the city agree that that's a better system, because the workload is overwhelming in these respective departments when things are busy. And sometimes there's nothing wrong with a more deliberate approach to certain things happening in the city. I don't think we really have any emergencies where that's failed, that the dual system has somehow failed to let the city do the right thing. The second thing is, I know that some of the members of the Charter Commission have spoken that they don't care to micromanage the way the city is run. Since you are, in essence, writing the constitution of the city, you're not micromanaging, but you do have to specify, in the opinion of myself and some other people to whom I've spoken, so that, like someone used that phrase, a lawyer doesn't have to tell you what it really means. The last thing is that the bonding issue, the average citizen out there, many of whom are working so many jobs and so many hours they can't come, but to whom I've spoken, do feel that in an era when the taxpayer is very, very hard-pressed, especially those of us who are retired and can't go back and earn as much as we used to each year, the idea that the citizenry would have some say above a certain amount with the referendum. As is well known, the referendums don't seem to turn down spending anyway, so it's not that it doesn't count because of that, but it's still our right as taxpayers. It's not just our children who will be paying these bond issues. Most of us hope to be alive 10, 20, or 30 years, and we'll be paying it back. And of course, the cost is always higher when you bond a current need. There are always going to be so many projects that are more than can be afforded by the current budget, and there'll always be a need for bonding. But I think it puts a little more constraint on how much will be bonded in a given year. If they know they have to go out to a public meeting, if they know there has to be a referendum above a multi-million-dollar cap that maybe could be agreed to, I don't think that's unusual. None of us have had the experience where our children have unlimited credit card access, or even ourselves have unlimited access to money by borrowing. We all have to be prudent. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Okay. Anybody else? Yes.
My name's Joel Urice, 44 Olympic Drive. Just want to talk on, briefly on to about 3 topics in reference to the minutes. And I was kind of neutral on this issue of term limits. But I think the point that Ms. Kabak made about the town clerk office being a longer tenured position, I think there's a lot of merit in her argument. Certainly I wouldn't, vote against a charter revision one way or the other, but I think that's something you should really seriously consider. The other offices, I don't know, but one way or the other. About the only good argument for it is that you're not always campaigning if it's an elected office. And you get to focus more time on doing the job rather than getting the next job again. On the issue of bonding and non-referendum limits, the only good argument I've heard throughout these testimonies for not having an annual limit on this, and it's kind of combined together. Well, we don't want to limit the administration's ability to work on projects, and in combination with that, well, that it allows the administration to bond things they might not want to take before the people. And when that argument was made, to me, that was the best argument in the world to put limits on. Because if there's projects that you don't want to take before the people, that's a darn good reason to make it be taken before the people. It's their money. It's taxpayers' money. Although not all voters are taxpayers, I understand. The third area I want to talk to is back on one of the agenda items for tonight. That's the Planning and Zoning Commissions. I've stated my position a number of times, but since this may or may not be the last time you address this issue, I kind of came away from the various testimonies that, again, the only real argument for combining these 2 commissions is that it's easier to administer. And I can understand staff wishing that. But there are so many arguments against it, and I think the strongest argument is the one that Mr. Jaber has made and other people have made, that it puts too much power in the hands of too few people. They're really molding the future development of this town. And there are certain checks and balances between these 2 commissions by having part of them elected, part of them appointed, focusing on different aspects, administration and strategic zoning. I think there's a lot of control there that needs to be there. We've heard arguments that there are towns in the region, mainly smaller ones like Ridgefield, that have a combined commission. And taking Ridgefield specifically, whenever there's the unspoken mandate that we will not allow commercial development in this town, at almost all costs. It's a pretty easy thing to administer. But when you start getting to bigger towns where commercial base is an important part of our tax base, an important part of the quality of living in this town, I think you want as many eyes on that as you can have on it. Bridgeport is one of the examples given of a big town that has combined those functions. And I just ask you, do you want Danbury to look like Bridgeport? I don't. That's about it.
Thank you. Yes.
Good evening. My name is Ben Chinese. I live in 5 Briar Ridge Road, and I'm again going to speak on a couple of issues. Some of them was already mentioned. One of the issues I want to speak about again is the bonding. I'm also in favor of some type of capping. Just take it back about a month ago when we passed the bonding that we did, those 4 bonds. And if we had this provision in place, we would be talking $10 million worth of bonding that currently happened. So I think we need to take that in consideration, what could happen if we don't have some type of capping or some type of mechanism within there that will allow it to go to a referendum. I think currently right now, if you read the current charter, it's really unclear whether it's per project or in total. I think we had that argument on the council floor, whether it's, again, per project and I think that needs to be clarified, whether it's in total or individual. And another thing I'd just like to bring up too is, in my opinion, I think the way the bond of the charter is written, is mainly, I would think, is for emergency purposes. You know, if a bridge needs repairs, there's funding available to do that without going to a referendum. And by upping it to $2.5 million, I think you take that away. So if you have $2.5 million, one, what happens if there is an emergency? Then what do we do? So I think you need to have some type of stipulation in there as far as a cap and something for emergencies to be used. Currently, if you just do that, you take that away. So I think you need to have some provision in the charter to deal with that. And the other thing I want to, again, talk about is, again, the planning and zoning combining. And previously, I was on the zoning commission. I served on the EIC commission. So I know the different layers that the city has. And I think it's important to have those layers. I think at times when I was on zoning, we passed a change where planning denied it. And then I was on EIC, we passed something, and the other commissions denied it. So it gives you that extra layer of comfort for the public to where it has a layer where it needs to go to before something gets passed. If you combine those two together, I think you take away a layer. And I think that ultimately will hurt the city in the end. And again, just want to bring about the term limits, about whether it should be 4 years or 2 years or whatever. Again, as a member of the council, I think a 2-year, it should be remain 2 years for the council, at least the council. I do agree that the mayor should be 4 years. I would support that. And I would support also the town clerk being 4 years. Because those jobs need to be a longer term, in my opinion. But the council, being a legislative branch, we need to be constantly evolving. So if you get 4 years as a council, and if that council doesn't necessarily work together, you can almost have a stalemate on the dais. By being rotating every 2 years, at least there's an opportunity for change. So I think that's some issues like to think of.
Any questions or comments?
Yes. Ben, what is your feeling about term limits for commissions like zoning and school board and things like that?
Well, again, I believe, again, certain commissions need that rotation. You need fresh ideas. So if they constantly are rotating, I think you get a fresh commission. I think you have people there 4 years or 6 years or whatever. You kind of get one standard. There's no room for change.
So the current system works then?
I think the current system works because it does allow the public the opportunity for change.
Okay.
So if you wait every 4 years, it kind of stalls it a little bit.
Thank you.
I just have a follow-up question. We've used two different words. We use length of term and term limit. You're talking about length of terms, right? You're not.
Length of terms.
Yes.
You don't have any position on term limits, is that correct?
No, term limits, I think the public will dictate term limits themselves.
Okay.
I don't think we have to force it on.
Ben, if we didn't have a top of the ticket running, if the mayor wasn't running, do you think people would come out and vote just for council members?
No.
How do we solve that?
Well, again, you have to solve it by the importance of the council, education. People don't understand what the council does and what their role actually is, and the power the council has, because we don't get the publicity as the mayor would get.
Yeah.
So I think if you tell the public the importance of your council, what a councilman actually or a councilwoman does, then they will feel, you know what, we better get someone in here who better represents us. And I think that's where it needs to be more publicity will hopefully solve that problem.
And then a follow-up question, you were on the zoning commission?
I was on zoning commission about 10 years ago.
Because we've been told one of the reasons for combining these is that planning has sometimes been frustrated getting the information they have to the zoning commission, so that the great plan that we have sometimes is overridden by the zoning board. Can you enlighten us on the communications between the separate boards at this point?
I know there have been times where, like, again, there are issues that pertain to all three commissions. And it does allow where all three commissions could meet on certain things. We don't have to meet separately. I believe I read in one of the books when I went to a seminar, if there's an issue that pertains to where zoning and planning need to act as one, you could have a joint commission where they could act as one. on certain projects, if it's large enough. I'm going to take the reserve, for example, which is a massive project in itself. On that issue, you could have where planning and zoning could meet as one, where they're two separate commissions, but it's the same night. So they're actually acting independently, but yet together where that communication that you were talking about can be held a little bit.
And did I understand you correctly? The planning commission could stop a project that's zoning approved?
Yes. I think Joel could, I believe they could.
One.
I'm letting you talk twice, but that's great.
Like I said, zoning regs, planning regs, they could.
If the plan as submitted, it may be in the proper zone, but the application of regulations to that particular project might not be valid. I mean, they may want to do something that's not consistent with the regulations. That's where we stop.
That's where zoning could stop.
These two
The
journals
planning
may be
could stop.
available later, and then we can pick that up.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I shouldn't, but it's very
That's
helpful.
why we're here, to give those, answer those questions.
Any other questions or comments? Then, thank you. Would anybody else like to address us? Mr. Levy.
Good evening. My name's Warren Levy, 5 Pilgrim Drive, and thank you for having me up here this evening. I appreciate the citizen government, self-regulating citizen government we have here. Two things. I previously, speaking before the commission, I talked about a capital budget, and the reason I spoke of the capital budget was apparently the rationale in a cap or a limitation on the borrowing was based on a capital budget that wasn't working. So I've made some suggestions and given the chairman a copy of what the National League of Cities has as a model capital budget process, which takes place 2 or 3 months before the submission of the general budget to the city of Danbury. I think that I don't want to prolong that too much, but even with the capping, and when you spoke in terms of raising the amount of money without a limitation, you kind of still have a freewheeled in spending without some kind of capping. We have a fund balance, and that's set aside money for emergency situations. As we've done in the past, we've closed the landfill. We needed $4 million to do that. As an interim period, we borrowed from the fund balance and then repaid the fund balance after we bonded the money. That was an emergency situation. So as far as emergencies, mayors needing instant money to cover that type of thing, the money is there. Currently, we have about $26 million set aside in the fund balance, which is governed and protects the rating of the city of Danbury. So it's there as collateral to protect that a situation where the city would need access to a lot of money rapidly. And the legislative body, the Common Council, could approve that. So I just wanted to make that statement so that everybody would understand that I do think that we should have limitations on the amount of money that we spend through bonding without taxpayers' approval, because there are no, I don't think we're hamstringing any administration as far as emergency situations come up. The money is available. And we shouldn't have, a capital budget should not be the rationale to spend freely on projects, because if the capital budget is done properly and you're foreseeing what a plan is for 5 years, then there's no necessity to say, oh, I've got to spend this money right away. This doesn't happen. Second issue is that I would like to address is the city clerk's office. And I was council president, and I've been on the Common Council. I'm going on 12 years. And the city clerk's office was it is not a statutory required office, as far as I know. It was a leftover compromise during the joining of the town and the city, and it has no qualifications. The council really needs staff. The council office needs qualified staff, and that's why, to cover that, because I think the 1992 charter, which allowed for the council to hire as many assistant city clerks as they would like, foresaw the fact that there was a possibility that, you'd have varying talents in the clerk's office, but there's research that has to be done. There's clerical work that has to be done that requires a certain competency level. And it requires that it work with the council president and the council itself on a regular basis, and that the council should really have that choice in the office to choose their staff, to support them as volunteers. That's my opinion. The legislative body has to be separated from the executive branch so that it can actually balance, you have a balance of power. And it shouldn't be the top of the ticket type of thing where you actually have a conflict between the executive portion of the government and the legislative portion of government. It should be independent so that the taxpayers and our citizens benefit to the maximum. And I think the third issue is on term limitations that you have. I think once at the other charter revision I inquired, and I'm not sure, correct me if I'm wrong, Corporation Counsel through the chair, but whether our home rule allows for term limitations. I think that was visited once before, and it doesn't allow for term limitations. As far as the actual term, I think 2 years is fine for the mayor, all down through the legislative body, because it forms, number one, you're accountable to the public on a 2-year basis. And that if you were to have 4 years for the top of the ticket, so-called, and 4 years there, 2 years, then a mayor could just say, well, I don't like this council, I'll just wait till the next one shows up, and then I can get more of what I want done. There's some inconsistencies there. I think that 2 years is a good term of office. It's time that people can report back to the public and say what their accomplishments were, or at the same time, the public is not stuck with incompetence in the offices. So those are the 3 issues I wanted to cover. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. 2 questions. You referred to a fund, Warren. Is that the unrestricted fund?
That's the
Okay, thank you.
the fund balance is what's referred to. It's outside the operating budget of the city of
That's the
Danbury.
$26-some million plus or minus a few. The capital budget process, you gave us some information on that. From your perspective, how much time does the Common Council spend reviewing the current capital budget during the review process?
Next to nothing in the way of review, and as a matter of fact, at budget time this year, truly the capital budget was only a number, and the council really didn't have a chance to see it at all.
But if you look at the budget book, the detailed budget book, there is a
section in the
there,
back
capital
that has
budget.
outlines the capital budget. And, that's a little bit disingenuous because of the way it's constructed, and I think that is a problem, and that's why I submitted that information on the capital program. There's certain projects that will never be funded by the local taxpayers. They'll be funded by state and federal government. And the mandate is that it has to be in the capital project program. So they're in there as expenses, but taxpayers are not going to pay for them. The bridges that we're rebuilding now, much of that is paid for by the state of Connecticut, but it's in the capital program, and it represents millions of dollars. There's other things in there that, for various reasons, were not high priority items, and mayors have chosen to say, okay, we'll put that in the capital budget. And that's almost like what they do in Washington when they pass a bill and don't fund it. It goes nowheres, but it accumulates in there. The other thing is the planning director is the one that's supposed to put together the capital budget, and I think more appropriately, it should come out of the executive office, the mayor's office. He's the one that should put the capital program together. It's his projects, his programs, and I think that the planning director should be in on that process, but not necessarily be the one who is responsible for it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. What we'll do is make this an agenda item at a future meeting, and we'll get this to everybody. Peter, if I can give that to you.
Thank you.
And we'll take a look at that.
Sorry.
You're welcome to sit.
Bad when there's no air conditioning. I have asthma and I'm having trouble breathing, so I'm probably going to take off shortly. I wanted to reiterate what Mr. Jaber said. It was kind of paraphrased in the minutes. The sentence, "too few people will have too much power," hit home to me. The fact that he recommended against combining was in the minutes. One of the things I didn't see is he said it would only simplify things for the staff. There would be no changes for developers or for the lawyers presenting, and I thought that was an interesting point. And part of the point that I wanted to bring out is, remember please the public in this process. Unless you are an abutting property owner and receive notice, the majority of the neighbors would have no idea about changes being made in their neighborhood. Hopefully, local newspapers would pick up the story and the neighbors could come out and speak at the other meeting if you keep them separate. If you put them together, these things are going to get through. I hear all the time, because people call me because of the show, "When did that go through? I didn't even know it was up." I mean, we don't publicize what we do here, and maybe we want to have an uninformed public, I'm not sure. And the newspaper is equally to blame because they don't tell anybody what's going on. But a lot of things happen in the dark, and I think that's wrong. I think it should be more publicized. My major point is what they tell doctors: do no harm. When you're writing the charter, try to do no harm. Please don't combine these commissions. I think you will harm a lot of people who would like to come out and speak on different issues, but if they're all together and they don't know about them, they won't have the opportunity. So if you don't have an overriding reason why you think there's a really special reason to put these two together, please don't. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Anybody else like to address us tonight? Okay, seeing none, we will then move to our agenda. Number 3 on the agenda, we will have a discussion with Jean Natale, City Clerk of the City of Danbury.
Thank you.
So let's start with you, Jean. Yes.
I'm thrilled to be here. I'd like to begin by probably apologizing. It seems like I should have been here quite a few months ago. That evening I got sick, but during the course of the months that progressed, I just wanted to clear up with you and don't want you to think that I was trying to blow you off. Okay, fine. It seems like somewhere along the line I've been taking criticism about not coming here, but just so you know, until you called, this is my first formal request to come back, and I'm really thrilled to be here. If you don't mind, I've prepared some written material.
Absolutely.
Hard to believe that I can be shy at times, but I am. So I'll start by beginning to say that this is I'm into my 3rd term as city clerk. And for the first time in over 40 years, the city clerk is doing the job as specified by the charter. Just to give you some history, I think Mr. Levy had touched on the fact, but to my knowledge, back in '77, when Mr. Donald Boughton took office and Mary Ann Dayhill was elected as city clerk, all city clerks have typically been a figurehead for the city, an elected position. Mary Ann Dayhill was the city clerk, with Mary Rickert actually being the assistant. When Betty Crudgington took office, it was Betty Crudgington, city clerk, and Jametta Samaha being the actual working city clerk. And now I am probably the first one who is the city clerk who has actual knowledge of what the city clerk is supposed to be doing. And when Ms. Samaha left the position of assistant city clerk, I assumed the position and have been doing the duties. The office was restructured at that time, back in '66, when the assistant city clerk retired, and it was restructured by the council, and I'm actually proud to admit that everything seems to be working out fine. Originally, it was done on a trial basis, and the council elected to keep the part-time assistant format, so full-time city clerk, part-time assistant. Part-time workers not only give this job or give more flexibility to the job, but it, as you all know, saves the city money, thus no benefits. So you're only paying an hourly salary. And in this time, especially when the mayor is putting a freeze on almost all of our spending, I think it has worked out well. It serves no one to just have one person knowing the job, whether it's just me, somebody in the past, or somebody in the future. If something happens to that one person, who's the loser but the city? And let me interject. In December of '06, I had only been an acting city clerk for like 6 months when I fell and I broke my femur bone, and I was in Bethel Home Health Care for like close to 3 months. Not a fun place to be. Okay, although I had a laptop and was checking messages every day, doing work from the Bethel Home Health Care, they actually had to hire someone to, come in and do some of the work. We were very fortunate that we had someone who picked up my workload in the city. But is that going to happen again? Not necessarily. We need to ensure that if, no matter who is in that position, whether it's a city clerk, whether it's a full-time assistant city clerk, there can never, ever be one person in that job. One person who holds the city hostage, or only one person who knows what those job responsibilities are. You need a situation such as we have right now, the elected city clerk and a part-time assistant, two people who know that job. The city clerk, as clerk of the council, just to go into some of what the charter now spells out, notifies the council and the citizens of the council meetings. The city clerk must also keep for public inspection copies of every proposed ordinance and a record of all proceedings, including all roll call votes. The clerk is responsible for the publication of all notices of hearings and publication of ordinances as may be necessary, and perform other such duties as the council may determine. The city clerk works right now with the mayor and the common council to serve the citizens of Danbury. The city clerk serves as the custodian of public records, ordinances, resolutions, minutes of the common council meeting, attests and seals official documents, and the office receives claims and lawsuits against the city. The mission. It is my mission to ensure the city's legislative processes are open and public by providing a link between the citizens and government through the dissemination of information, and to ensure the preservation, access, and integrity of records required to be stored for legal and public records. Let me go through some of the duties. I remember when I was the registrar of voters, everybody would say, "What do you do?" What do you do aside from 2 months before or a month before the election? What is the registrar of voters? Well, I got the same thing with, what does the city clerk do? Do you have any jobs? So here's some of the duties. Prepare the agenda. The agenda is the monthly items that go before the Common Council. I notify department heads of agenda deadlines. I receive items and reports for this agenda. I make necessary copies. I bind 30 agenda books monthly. I make provisions for the distribution of the agenda through the constables. I make the copies public. I make copies for the public for the night of the meeting. I copy and distribute the consent calendar on that night. I attend the Common Council meetings and I read off the agenda for both the regular and the special. I post the council meetings. I make sure minutes are done in a timely fashion. I have minutes approved through the department heads or through the council president. I post the minutes on the city website, the town clerk's office, the caucus board, and the outside information boards. I notify the department of reports requested. I make ad hoc files. I send necessary thank yous to the people who have contributed to the city. Fourth, I make special Common Council meetings. I do the procedures the same as for the agenda. I make sure the proper notice is given. Make sure constable delivers personally. I secure a secretary. Number 5, set up ad hoc meetings. We have several ad hoc meetings every month, depending upon what is sent by the council to an ad hoc meeting. I check the availability of the committee members. I call each committee member and make sure that they're available for the night. I check the availability of the secretary. Prepare and distribute all reports necessary for the ad hoc members. Make sure all notices and reports are filed in a file folder. Send notices to committee members and interested parties, particularly those that call in, even sometimes those who don't call in. If I feel it's necessary, I send them a notice. Post the notices with the town clerk, the IT department for the city calendar, the information, and the caucus board. Number 6, I post the ad hoc meetings. Have minutes approved by the committee chair. Complete the file. Prepare the report for the agenda. Public hearings. Number 7, meet with the Common Council. Generally, he's so busy, sometimes I have to remind him he has to do public hearing meetings. Meet with the council president to set the date. Send the appropriate notices. Publish the legal notice. Secure a secretary to do the minutes. Prepare and distribute all reports necessary for the council. Post the notices with the town clerk, the IT department for the city calendar, the information, and the caucus boards. Check the minutes and place on the next Common Council agenda. Ordinances. Number 8. Follow the procedure for the public hearing. Publish ordinances in the newspaper. Send to Municode. Municode is on the website, and Municode also is for our agenda for the Code of Ordinance book. The bonding reports for the bond council. Send the reports, send the copies of ordinances. Send copies of notice of enactment. Send copies of notice of publishing. Send copies of notice of public minutes. Send certified copies of council as a whole meeting minutes. Send certified copies of council meetings. If a referendum held, send certified copy results. I supervise the staff. I hire the secretary for all Common Council meetings, including ad hocs. I take care of the payroll of the staff. I have to approve through a Cronus system the hours for the secretaries and for my part-time staff. Number 12, I certify documents for various departments and agencies, which means they come in, I have to seal it, I have to sign it, I have to seal it with the city of Danbury. I keep the calendar of the minutes. I schedule all meetings for the 3rd floor except for 3A. I schedule all rooms on the 3rd floor except for one room. I take care of the day-to-day operations of the office, which includes answering the phone. I prepare and maintain budgets for not only the city clerk, but I also help for the council. I order supplies not only for the city clerk, but for the Common Council. I am the liaison between the mayor, the corporation council, the department heads, and the public with the council. And many times people call up and they have questions. They don't know who to ask. I refer them to the right Common Council person or to the president. I assure the availability of public information by the viewing for the public for ordinances and resolutions or council minutes. And the most important thing I have, that I've been there all this time, is I provide the candy and the snacks for the public, for the mayor, for the council, for department heads, for the staff, and most importantly, for the fish. They get fed daily. Now, to
You go out
continue.
for bid for those, by the way?
No, I provide, I don't go out, they're paid by me. I don't ask anybody for money. The improvements. I have changed the format of the agenda. This is what we call the agenda. This is your typical common council book, which I have created my own format, I wanted to have something, my own signature format. This is what it is for the public. It's I'm up to now, everybody's requesting tabs, but I tabulate for myself and some of the key department heads, because when you're at a meeting, it's kind of, sometimes you have to go back and you have to refer to items. So I have came up with this system of putting everything in a uniform book, uniform pages, and I think it's something that is kept on file, particularly by the mayor, appreciated by the mayor and some of the corporation council, something that can be put away. I'm going to go to so every month I do this agenda. I put it together. It's a big job. I have to admit that anybody who's ever done it knows it's a big job. A lot of times they come in at the last minute when you're almost all done and they say, can I add something on the agenda? Now this is a bound book. You can well imagine what it is to take this book apart and to add an item. But nevertheless, most of the times we will accommodate whoever needs to add an item. The agenda is uniform in size. It is tabulated for leadership, for both the Republicans and the Democrats, I might add. Mail is now forwarded instead of the council people having to come in and pick up their mail. When I send the constable out with this thick book, I also collect all their mail so that they don't have to be coming in on a constant basis and picking up what is mostly junk mail, I have to tell you. If it's something urgent, I call them, say there's something I'm putting in your mailbox, either come in or I can mail it to you. So, and that happens quite frequently. I don't make a point of opening up their mail, and if it looks important, I will call a council member and ask him to come in. The notice of the ad hocs, the meetings, are all posted on the city website. All that was not done in the past. It's another job for the city clerk. I mean, contrary to what people think, this job involves a lot of details. It's a tremendous amount of details that you have to remember on a monthly and sometimes a weekly basis. All council members receive a weekly email regarding all of their meetings, booked for the council chambers and the caucus rooms, in addition to the written notice that they receive if they're on an ad hoc committee. An ad hoc, for those of you who don't meet, are like subcommittee members meetings. There's generally several ad hoc meetings every month and there's 3 people on that committee. So I have to notify those three people, plus all involved, generally corporation council, the people who has submitted that letter to the council. It may be the mayor, it may be outside, it may be another corporation council, it might be a department head. So all these people have to be noticed through the mail. Let's see, forgive me if all council members receive this weekly email in addition to the written notice. I have recently streamlined the sewer and the water application. It was by charter that sewer and water applications have to go before the common council, but I said, wait a minute, we're doing the cart before the horse here. Let's have these applications. I called together the engineering department, the head of the, Mr. Cobble, the common council president, and I said, let's try to revisit this. Let's have these people, especially the public, go down and see engineering first. Let them get their information first before they waste the time of the common council ad hoc committee members, number one, and the engineering department that come to these ad hoc meetings. Let's have them go down, talk to Fareed Corey, get the information that they need, and then if it's applicable, then we schedule an ad hoc meeting. So I'm calling it streamline the sewer and the water applications. It's been a great plus, and now engineering, instead of doing ad hoc meetings, we now do reports from the Planning Commission and the Engineering Department. They give their recommendation, and if there's something further that needs to be done, the council has the authority and the right to then schedule a further ad hoc committee. But right now, for the last several months, it seems to be shortening everybody's time and lessening bringing out these volunteers on a monthly basis to go through typical, ordinary sewer and water applications. The sewer and the water applications expedites the process for the applicant, and it is much more efficient. I'm instituting a new procedure. I've called several of the city clerks around the town, and they're interested in getting into having a city clerk meeting. We just started sharing some information, and now we're going to start meeting like the town clerks and the registrar of voters, the city clerks, in towns where the city clerk is the clerk of the council. We are now going to start meeting and sharing. They saw this, and that's the first thing that they wanted to do. They asked my advice. I sent them the format, and I said we're going to get together and keep working on what they do. You'd be surprised. I think I've learned more information when I was a registrar of voters on cigarette breaks outside of the conference room. I've learned much more information than listening to the Secretary of State's office. I'm working on standardizing the minutes, which are supposed to be a reflection, as Mr. Peter would probably know. It's not supposed to be a lengthy discussion. It's supposed to be basically about actions taken. And so I am working on the standardization of the minutes and looking into a new process for the city so that we can preserve them digitally. I'm looking into scanning the old records for preservation. We have records down in the office. The Waterbury clerk came in and said that they recently had a flood and said to me, by God, where are your old records? If they're sitting downstairs, do something. Don't let it happen what happened to us, where the building was flooded and all the I'm also now preparing a manual on how the city clerk's office operates for future occupants and staff. I have to tell you, and I think anybody knows this, when I walked into this office, the assistant city clerk had left the office and retired, and I was sort of left holding the bag. I have to admit, I came in, there was no manual, there was no how-to, there was nobody that I could call up and say, what did you do before? I literally had to learn it on myself, and that is why, if nothing else, I strongly would urge that this office never have one person. Never ever have one person, because there could be anybody, whether they die, whether they choose to leave abruptly, and at their discretion, if they don't forward the information of what goes on in this office, the person coming in is at a loss, whether that's a clerk, whether it's an elected official. We can never have that again. We need this office to have a manual, to be presented like any other office, whether it be the town clerk office, whether it be the registrar of voters office. It is the same thing. We at least had two, and I thought that was scary. I have to tell you certain instances in the city where we have two registrar of voters in every town, and I said to George Schmiedel, my partner at the time, I cannot imagine the two people not being elected and two new people coming in and running the election within 2 months after they take office. This is the same thing, like any job that you started on, if you've started on, it takes you a minimum of a year to learn that job. You go through a cycle. There's all kinds of cycles. There's budget cycles, there's regular cycles, there's certain ordinances, there's the bond council. There is so much to learn about this office. You cannot let one person ever have the knowledge in their head that when they walk away, they take that information with them. It's devastating to the city. So, let me tell you the things that I've seen since I've been there and been an operating city clerk. Number one, we do such a disservice to our community by having this office be called the city clerk's office. Do you know why? Because everybody in Danbury, in Florida, in Mexico, anybody who calls me thinks I am the town clerk. They're constantly calling me about birth certificates. Where can I get my deed? I have people leaving messages on my machine saying, "Hi, this is Johnny Johnson. I'm in Florida. I cannot make my court date with the judge. Will you please tell the judge that I'm unable to be there at 10 o'clock? And I'm thinking to myself, good God, what do I do for this person? And I'm sure the people in the past who've been in this office have gone through. Betty has gone, I know Betty Crushington, God love her, said the same thing. She says, on a daily basis, I receive a minimum of 20 calls. Some people from all over the country asking for information about the town clerk. They think clerk. I've gone as far as getting the supervisor from the telephone company saying, good God, please tell me why you're giving my number out to everybody. They said, you know what? You're the C clerk. You come up before the T clerk. So we give out your number. I says, please stop this. She says, it probably won't happen. I begged them, take me out of the phone book. You know why? People are calling long distance to my office for a town clerk. You know what? It's almost a blow to my ego. Nobody really wants the city clerk. They're looking for the town clerk, okay? Let's face it, they don't want me. In all fairness to them, they're spending money, and I have to tell them that now I have to transfer them to the town clerk. And in most cases, they're so busy, particularly on a Monday, that they get put into a message center anyway. We need to change this name for everybody's sake. It's not fair to the people, whether it be legislative clerk, whether it be common council clerk. I don't really care what you call it, but it needs another name, please.
As an aside, I would recommend that all the commissioners call Jean's office number. When you hear her message, it says, if you want this, call this number. If you want, she goes, you don't want this number.
Right.
And the menu was hysterical.
And it is hysterical, and the funny part of it is I'm trying to be helpful to them. And in the very end, the message will be on Monday when I come in. Hi, this is Johnny Johnson. I'm calling about my court date on Monday. I can't make it. And I'm saying, God love you. How could you hear my message and still leave me your message? But anyway, the name must be changed. You know what? We're a city of what? 70+ thousand people. We should not be called, Lori Kabak's office should not be called the town clerk. She really should be the city clerk. I think people, that's why they say, what do you do? Well, you're the city clerk, what do you do? She needs to be the city clerk, really. I think you need to keep the position of the city clerk as an elected position. As an elected official, it keeps the office with a certain amount of respect, not only from the elected officials, but the office is never held hostage by having a civil servant. An elected official has more accountability than a civil servant, who is in today's world can make all kinds of threats if they're reprimanded. The previous charter commissions have looked at changing this position, have decided against it, feeling that position is best suited as an elected position. The part-time assistants, and I say assistants, the main assistant that I have is being trained in all aspects, even with the minutes. We now have clerical services of the council, including ad hoc, working out just fine. Having people who are available to do common council minutes is working out just beautifully. If we're not set to, oh, she can't make it. I have various people doing the common council minutes, so we always have the availability to get it done. We no longer have one person controlling everything, and this allows for greater flexibility of minutes and ensures that somebody is always available to do the meetings. We I suggest that you change the term of the office for 4 years for all the officials, not just necessarily for my office. It takes time to learn any job. You have cycles. Even if you complete the first cycle, you're still kind of learning it when you're starting on the second year. And by the second year, you're kind of getting into it, but now is the time after that that you feel comfortable enough into job to make changes. And in with people for 4 years, in comes new ideas. When I came to the registrar office, they had this big, just to give you examples, and I don't mean to be tooting my own horn, I'm trying to hit home some of the ideas. They were doing these sheets of papers this big and sending them out to the printing department. And then we were held hostage by the printing department because we only had a short span, a week, and the Democrats were looking for all the election officials and the Republicans, and we had them at the printing office. And after my first year, I kind of kept quiet in the registrar's office, and I said to George Schmiedel one day, George, why aren't we doing this in-house? And he says, don't know, never thought about it. So we changed it to be an in-house so we didn't have the cost of doing it outside. We also went to a book format, which was a lot easier to make copies of, and I think it was a vast improvement. It's the same thing here. I think it takes you a long time. Let me get something perfectly clear. At my age, and I will not reveal it, so don't ask. I'm not a 22-year-old kid who's just starting out and looking to lock myself into a position. I realize the situation I'm in. I'm looking to retire people. I'm just saying from what I've seen from this position and from the registrar's position, I would agree that 4 years is not too long to be in there. I don't think you get stale. I think you get better. I don't think anybody does that bad of a job. I think if the people elect you, they have the thought that you're going to do a decent job, maybe even a better than decent job. I don't think anybody takes a job to do a bad job. They try to do it the best they can. Maybe other people don't think they're doing a good job, but I noticed that the longer I was in that job and the longer that I'm in this job, do I think of common sense things to do, such as changing those applications for the sewer and water. It kind of took me time to think about that, but it's making more sense to the department head, to the council people, and to myself. We're saving a lot of people, a lot of aggravation, and we're shortening the time for the sewer and the water applications. I know I'm rattling on, I'm sorry. And another thing, for any of you some of you people are involved politically, you know that the elections cost a lot of money. With the costs, and the costs are increasing. You're asking people every 2 years to go through the same thing, spending needless money. I know it may not seem like a big thing to you, but you know what? I'm not a rich person. I don't mind doing it. It's a terrible way to keep a job, though. Many cities and towns, you'd be surprised, already have 4-year terms. And I think we're way behind the times. I think we need to get into a 4-year term. And like I said, for myself, it's not for me, it's for the future. Changing the requirement for the publishing of ordinances. People, we really have to do something. I just went down and I checked with Chick, and just between my office and the Planning Commission, Planning Department, I have spent, within the 2 years, $26,000. They have spent $56,000. That's not to say about what the town clerk spends, what the legal... This is absolutely ludicrous to be publishing these ordinances in our newspaper. The only people that are benefiting is the News Times. And on top of that, we have to deal with their arrogance. I am trying to get these down to be as cost-effective as possible, and no matter what I do to shorten them up, they will turn around and say they're not readable, and they put them in, obviously, because it benefits the News Times to make them as large as possible, with the most space as possible, and we are at their mercy. We need to change this. I don't care how you structure it, whether we put a notice under the legal department, under the legal notices, that these ordinances are on file with the city clerk, on file with the town clerk, on file in the website, on file with the library, on file with anybody you want to make. But we've got to take them out of the hands of being published in the News Times. We are spending way too much money. And I'm going to tell you, the
I interrupt you for
average
just a
person
second?
does not read them. Yes, sir.
Is that something that is a state statute, Rick? That it must
believe
appear?
so, but I would have to check to confirm it.
Thank you.
I
Would
believe
you?
publication with respect to public hearings and ordinances is...
I have it here. And all I'm saying is
Gene, what
there...
section?
Pardon?
What section of the charter?
You're going to ask me that now, right? Hold on.
No, we'll dig it up.
We'll look at it
We'll find
later.
Thank you.
And I did look at it. And it is, you know what, there's always a way around something. You guys are really smart. You're a lawyer. I'm wondering if a notice can't be put in the legal notices stating that these items, ordinances are on file,
Yeah.
whether they have to be spelled out. I mean, it kind of makes me nauseous, really, to be spending this kind of money for the News Times. If the average person benefited from it, I would agree with it. But you know what? Half the people in Danbury don't even get the News Times
It
anymore.
is section 310, by the way, but let's go on with city.
Okay, in this day and age of the internet, I have to tell you, I think more people check the meetings, check the notices, check the calendar, our city website, than they do check the News Times. That's my personal opinion. So again, change the requirements for publishing ordinance. Use the internet and other technology. It is not cost-effective to publish the entire ordinance in the News Times as a legal notice. I'm not even against these ordinances, depending upon the size, range from anywhere from $1,100 to $4,000 to print. Very few people read them in the News Times. It would make more sense to publish them on the city website and have copies, like I said before, the library, the town clerk, the city lobby, wherever you want them. If you don't want to do this, consider a display ad in the News Times. Perhaps we can do display ads or go to somewhere like the Tribune. They have a big following. Ads cost considerably less than a legal notice. An example, on June 10th, we had a public hearing on 9 ordinances, and only one member from the public came and spoke. When those 9 ordinances are adopted, it will cost over $10,000 to print them in the News Times. This happens several times a year. Okay, the second recommendation is increase the donation limit departments are allowed to receive without asking for council approval. An example, every month I read on the council and agenda, the senior center receives a $5 or $10 donation, and that donation must be sent to the council for approval. I would recommend that the departments may receive up to $200 or $250 in donations before requiring...
We've already acted on
You
that.
have?
Yep.
Okay, great. You know what? Right now, that's about all I have to say. I'm flattered that you asked me to come here. I really am. I don't know if you have any questions. I can come back if you'd like.
I suspect there's going to be a few questions, and we might invite you back.
You
Gene.
might?
So
Okay,
any
great.
Questions, everybody?
Any
Anybody?
questions?
Your preference on a name rather than city clerk?
Legislative aid, common council clerk, it's the clerk that's throwing them. But legislative clerk is a possibility. I mean, legislative aid that gets rid of the word clerk.
And the next question, just in the position, not your particular experience in it, but in the position itself, it's an independent position. It's elected on a citywide election. You are the clerk of the council, but yet you don't report to the council.
Sure I do.
It's kind of hard
I
to...
don't report to the council.
Okay.
Sure I do.
But it's independent of the council.
No, I'm the clerk of the council.
Okay.
I am the clerk of the council. Something came up before, and I was asked a question, I think it might have been by you, and it was about interfacing with the mayor. I have to tell you that I think the clerk, Mr. Levy got up and talked about staff. I don't know what I am. I thought I was a staff for the council. I mean, I've never, ever had a request, and I know they do it all the time. I've never had a council member call and say, you know what, Jean, I'm doing an ad hoc about something this week. Can you go down to engineering and look into that for me? I have to tell you that it seems like most council people kind of like to do that themselves. I mean, certainly if a council member had asked me to do it or to research something, I'd be glad to do it. That's what I'm there for. I'm there for them. But I have to tell you that there's been many instances where, because the council president, these people are volunteers. So I'd be glad to do whatever they want. Many times, like today, I call them up over a week and say, don't forget you got a meeting tonight. They say, oh yeah. There's been some people that have forgotten because I haven't reminded them. But the thing of it is I am the clerk of the court, of the council. Whatever they want me to do, I'm there for them. If they want me to research information about a particular ad hoc coming up, I'd be glad to do it, or be glad to have my assistant do it. But what's important is I think that you need someone in there who's able to work with the mayor and with the council president, who generally you work with. The average council person isn't calling you. It is more like me calling the council president. And that, because they are volunteers and because they work in jobs, and I know that Mr. Nolan for a while was working up in the state, he just can't pick up the phone and call them. You need to have the mayor as a liaison in part of this. You need to be able to work with the mayor. Let me just give you an example. Recently, I was scheduling an ad hoc meeting, and it came up at the last minute that the ad hoc committee that I was working on, well, there was a little bit of a snafu with another town, and the ad hoc committee could not go forward because the only people who knew this were the city attorneys and the mayor, knew that there was a problem, and that committee could not go forward. And I was scheduling it. At the meantime, I was in the process of scheduling this meeting. I can't necessarily pick up that phone, nor does he necessarily know that when I call the common council president, is he up to every single thing that is going on with the city. He doesn't know if something has fallen through. I think you need to be able to, and I don't care what party you're in, I don't care if you're a elected Republican, you need to be able to put that aside, and I think almost anybody would be, and go to the Democratic mayor, whoever they would be, and say, I have a question on this. Can you help me? That's what a clerk is about. It's about a job. It's not about politics. It's about getting a job done. How can you sit in that office and not function and expect to receive a paycheck? You need to work with everybody. Whether I work with Democrats, I work with Republicans, I work with the mayor, I work with corporation council, and that's the way the job should be, no matter who's in there. And it's about all I have to say.
Go ahead.
No.
A couple of points. First of all, I want to thank you for clearing up a lot of questions that I had regarding the responsibilities of the department. I think you've been quite thorough in what you have communicated to us. Could I get a copy of that
Sure.
job description at some point, Jane?
Sure, absolutely.
The thing that troubles me a little bit, and it's kind of hitchhiking on what Peter is hinting at, this is obviously a very important function to the city in keeping the Common Council going on schedule, coordinating it with the mayor. Sure. Thank you.
Sorry about that. Continue.
Thank you, Peter.
We don't have a clerk of the commission.
But we have an excellent secretary.
I have a couple I can give you.
I think he's way above the guy who's doing it's way above his pay grade.
Good help is hard
I
to
just
find,
hope he
huh?
doesn't bill us.
Get a new name, no clerk.
Go ahead.
And obviously, with your interfacing with a variety of departments within the city, it troubles me a little bit, quite honestly, that we would opt to leave this open to an elected official. I would think continuity in this position would be important. And you know, if you were not in office, somebody else coming in, your experience coming into an office, not having, you know, any prior experience in that particular field, doesn't that leave the city exposed to a lot of pitfalls in terms
The
of...
city was in that position.
But you've been in there 3 years, and so this
No,
is what...
technically, I was not in there 3 years.
3 terms.
I was in there 3 terms, but I was not an acting city
Right.
clerk.
But now
Neither
you
was
have-
Betty Crudgington, and neither was Massoud, and neither was Deucebella.
My point exactly.
Right, okay.
You know, what is the risk to the city of having this, say, an elected official, as opposed to either a civil service employee or an appointed position? Is there any advantage to the latter versus an elected official?
Yes,
in your opinion?
Well, I think I went through that. Number one, I'm probably the first one in the history that's doing a manual that's going to give somebody information and that they don't have to go searching for the information to all their questions. I mean, when I came aboard, I had nothing, zip up. I had to rely on people like Robin Shepherd to come and to tell me some of the things I had to do, and the council, and the mayor, and it was all pieced together. We can't ever let that happen again, and you cannot be assured that that won't happen again when you have a civil service. At least an elected official has to be accountable to someone. What if I had, as an elected official, sat back and said, I don't have to do anything, I'm an elected official. I can make my own hours, I don't have to do any work. Where do you think I would be? Do you think I would have been elected again? Don't you think that would have gotten out to the public? Do you understand what I'm saying? I think by having an assistant and people who take minutes and know what the process is, that if something happens to me, if tomorrow I die, which could happen to my husband, so an assistant who's been trained now takes over. You always have continuity because you have an elected official who knows what to do, and now you have an assistant. And on top of that, it saves money. You're not paying out for benefits. And the council could have changed that. If they don't think it was working out, they had the option of changing that to a full-time assistant. Someone who does not hold the city hostage. That's all I'm saying. Someone that's accountable to someone.
You keep mentioning his part-time assistant.
Yes.
Is this an authorized position by the Common Council?
Yes.
And
Yes.
there is one now,
Yes,
right?
that's what they set up,
Okay.
a part-time assistant.
From what I understand,
And
there is no limit. They can make them full-time, part-time.
Yes, right.
or any
And they
number of
went
people.
through where they did not, for the second time, did not choose to make that person
So to
full-time.
answer some of the input we've heard tonight, you know, if there is a need for personnel to support the council, they have the
You know what,
authority now to do that.
that's such a strange request, because outside of setting up ad hocs, I have to be honest with you, I don't get council people calling me to set up ad hocs. I'm calling council people to set up ad hocs.
No, but what I mean,
It's not
Jeannie,
like
is
the-
if the council felt like they needed additional support, it is within their
Absolutely.
authority to...
They
to
have
vote.
that right. That's what we are all about. If they
Okay.
said, this is not working, a city official is not working with a part-time assistant, we want a full-time, they have that right. That's what we're there for. We're there to accommodate them. So apparently, it's, go ahead.
Just a question.
Yes.
The part-time assistant, how many hours is that?
19. Up to 19 hours. Up to 19 hours.
Any other
That's a week.
questions?
That is a week. Yes.
Thank you.
Gene, a couple of questions.
Sure.
One of the things we're trying to do, one, we've got to take out the personalities involved. Because the
Absolutely.
one thing we found is right now we have very good people in all the positions
Mm-hmm.
that we're dealing with. But it doesn't mean that the position is still the right position. So one of our questions is we're trying to simplify the charter if we could.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the ways of simplifying it is if the charter didn't have that position defined in there, then it would be up to the mayor and the city council to create the position of clerk of the council. And it might be that they would then be in that position where they would say, plus we need some research people, and it would give them some flexibility. One of the issues that we're dealing with is, by having it in the charter, that then has to be a filled, it's got to be an elected position, it's got to be filled. You've told us why you think it should be elected. My question is, should it even be a charter commission, a charter position? Why not give the mayor and the council the opportunity to decide what that office would look like, what the clerk of the council positions would be, whether they're all part-time, whether they would have a part-time attorney and, doing research and things like that? Because we've heard from people on the council that say they need their own legal staff for legal opinions that might be separate from the corporate council.
Okay, well, certainly I wouldn't be able to help them there. I'm sorry.
But should it be a charter position? What happens if we just eliminated it from the charter?
I guess we wouldn't know that, would we? We've never tried it. I couldn't guess at what would happen. I mean, I can only deal with what we've had in the past and now in the future. And I have to say, like you had asked me before about having different people in, and I have to tell you that I want to make it clear that I am not here for my own sake. I'm not here to try to lock in a job for myself. I'm a little too old for that. But I'm not against this elected official. I mean, I think it's about accountability. That's what I'm really concerned with, accountability. And I don't know how else you're going to get that unless you have an elected position, whether it be the town clerk or even the registrar of voters.
If I were to run for your office
Yes.
and get elected,
Yes.
two highly improbable things, but if I were to run and become elected,
Right.
and I'm not 1/10 as organized as you, and now I'm the city clerk,
Okay.
totally disorganized. I don't get the minutes out. I don't get that bound properly. I don't get notices out. Who am I accountable to in the current charter setup, and what could the council do about it, or what could the mayor do about it? Because I've now been elected for a 2 or possibly a 4-year term, and I'm just no darn good.
Holy mackerel, the only thing I could tell you is that, like I started off by saying, for 40 years, we've had a person in there who was not doing the job. And they've been elected and re-elected because of some reason. They at least had some kind of accountability, whether it's because they had a good clerical person beneath them.
So who hires the clerical people underneath you at this point? You hire them, or the council, or the mayor?
Well, at this point of time, it was a combination of people hiring them. But if you don't have a good assistant, even the city clerk doesn't keep an assistant who is not good.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you do need, I will grant you that, you need, if nothing else, an assistant in there. Because you can never have one person in that office. That is the worst mistake you're ever going to make. Like I said, when I broke my leg, who accounted for that? I mean, that could happen in any job. No single person should ever be in that office. Whether it's an assistant, whether it's an elected official, there should be more than one person. You were just fortunate that we were able to have somebody pick up and run with that job. I don't know what you would do if it happened again. You can't make the mistake of putting one person in that office.
I get that. But
Trust me.
But we're trying to protect the city from someone going into that office being an elected position that never does the job.
But that's
or doesn't
what's
do the
happened
job
all
well.
this time.
Well, and now
you've
what we're trying
always
to do
had
is
a good
solve.
assistant. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Stay with that assistant. It doesn't need to be full-time. I don't think the job warrants a full-time assistant. But the elected official who makes sure, who has to have the accountability and having a good assistant, I think is work for
And
this
the
time.
assistant is accountable to you or to
Or to the council.
Well,
The assistant.
currently, is that person
Yes,
accountable
to
to you?
both.
So the president of the council doesn't tell the assistant what to do?
Yes, they're assistant city clerks. The clerk is the clerk of the council.
Okay.
So the assistant city clerk has to be accountable to the council as well.
Okay.
Gene, you mentioned this accountability item. I just come across a document that was in my files that when Vinnie Nolan was president of the Common Council, I guess this discussion had come up once before. And he said, he made the argument that an elected official, i.e. city clerk, would be under no obligation to work for any other elected office. Could you add something to that?
I don't know what you mean, work for any other, what does that mean?
Obligated to work for any other elected office, meaning back to what Peter was saying, as an elected official, you're independent. You don't really report to anybody, you report to the electors of Danbury. That's what I'm reading in this statement.
No, you report, technically, you're doing the work of the council. You're elected by the electors.
But the council cannot hire or fire a city clerk. The council does not provide you with a performance evaluation. They cannot recommend an increase, or maybe they can, I don't know.
Yes, they do recommend an
They
increase.
recommend
Yes.
for merit increases or
Yes.
anything of that
Right.
nature. So they do have some jurisdiction over the office,
Yes.
you're saying?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
That clears that up.
I don't know how you could sit in that office and function as a city clerk and not do what they want you to.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
Who prepares I think you might have mentioned it though, when you say prepare the monthly meeting, the ad hoc committee,
I do.
the reports for the ad hoc, will you prepare that also?
No. I have several, I call them minute takers, depending upon their availability. The minute takers go in and they take the minutes of the meeting, and then they send those minutes to me, and I review them, and then I forward them to the chairperson, and they approve those minutes. And then if need be, I make the corrections, or the minute taker makes the corrections.
So the minute takers prepares the reports?
Yes, yes. We have a lot of, part of the function when they made the part-time assistant, it was not feasible for the assistant to be doing the ad hoc minutes plus working in the office. It was just, it can be very time-consuming. Some of these meetings, especially at budget time, they go for hours and hours, so you could not plan on just one assistant coming in. And this way, again, it ensures that we always have somebody that can come in and do the minutes, you know what I mean? You can't, like if they broke their leg, you could say you only have one person. No, I prepared that I have several people doing the minutes so that if one's not available, somebody else is available. So I'm trying to cover all bases, you know what I mean? And one last thing. We talked about terms. The one thing I like about an elected official, that something that, like I said, when I came in to be the registrar and then when I came in to be the city clerk, not to put anybody down, but I think anytime you come into an office and you've had a year to be in there, I think now you start using your time to think about improvements. You know, what can I do to make this job better, make it easier? You know what I mean? And that's one thing that I think, you know, everybody has their own place. You can't sit in an office like that, or the registrar's office, or the town clerk's office, and be in there for a year without making some improvement to that office. And 2 years is not a whole lot of time, but I'm just saying, I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but this is now a condensed book where papers don't fly out of rubber bands, and it's something that can be put on a shelf and stored for the future. You know what I mean? It's just a handy-dandy little thing that I thought of. Is it a big deal? For me, it is. You know, I put a lot of effort into thinking about something like this, but it was an improvement to the office. And I'm sure someone will come in when I retire. If you keep this position, they'll say, I got something even better than she had. You know what I mean? So you get that when you have people coming in. I did that for the registrar's office. I would like to pat myself on the back and say that I thought of things to ways of conserving, ways of improving and conserving, and always looking out for the almighty dollar, you know?
Was that prepared in-house?
This, yes, I do this. I do this every month. I bind it, I put it together, it's in the same format, it's in one continuous format. I'm just saying, you know what, you try, you do the best you can, you're not sitting there as an elected official. Let me tell you, no elected official, I don't care who it is, whether it's the treasurer, or the town clerk, or the mayor, is sitting on their laurels for two years. You're sitting in there, you're doing the job the best you can, and you're trying to improve the office. I think I can speak freely for everybody that's currently there. Thank you for hearing what I had to say, good or bad.
Hang on. Jean,
Just want to
Diane?
ask one quick question.
Sure.
You said the office was reorganized in 2006, and this is
Yes.
your third term. So
Yes.
the duties of the city clerk prior to that were different than...
We're done by the assistant city clerk.
And so what were the duties of the city clerk?
Same as the city clerk.
So,
Very complex, isn't it? Very complicated, isn't it?
We will change names if nothing else.
Yes.
I'm a long-time Danbury, so I haven't been in Danbury that long, and so I
I don't think the average person knew that the
Okay.
city clerk's job was being done by the assistant city clerk for all these years.
And then the elected official, you had other duties besides what's in the charter for the city clerk, or you just oversaw the assistant?
I did various jobs, but not the main job.
Oh, okay.
I think everybody, if they're going to be honest, I think you all know who've been politically involved, know that the city clerk's job was not being done like it is today.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. No problem. Anytime.
Bye, Jean.